Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. And happy Halloween to all of you Packers fans out there. Happy Halloween, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to skip out of the office a little bit early today. I got a very excited 5-year-old that is ready to hit the streets and get some candy that he probably won't end up eating, but he loves the process.
Yeah, and can you spill the beans on the show, what his costume is?
Do you know what Wild Kratts is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it's a PBS show.
Okay.
He's a huge fan of it. They have they kind of, it's two brothers, and now it's kind of an animated type show now too, and then they can transform into animals and things like that. So he's I think it's like a spider monkey kind of thing. So he has this blue costume, and he's very excited about it.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a very exciting costume. So
it's a little bit bigger. Everything's more elaborate these days than when I was a kid, when it was I'm a fireman. Now it's I'm this character from a TV show that's very niche, but he's pumped about it.
Well, I would prefer to spend this show talking about Halloween and sharing all kinds of Halloween stories, but we actually, unfortunately, have another Packers loss to talk about, and it's the fourth one in a row. This one to the Minnesota Vikings at home at Lambeau Field. The final score was 24-10, and when you look at how this game unfolded, as we talked about last week, a lot of similarities to previous games in terms of the Packers not being able to get anything going on offense in the first half. And this game in particular happened to then get away from the Packers with that sequence at the beginning of the second half. It's 10-3, the beginning of the third quarter. The Vikings get the ball first because they had won the toss and deferred. And in a very short amount of time, the Vikings drove the length of the field, got a touchdown. They get an interception, and then they score another touchdown right away. And suddenly, in less than half a quarter, a 10-3 game becomes a 24-3 game. The Packers are in catch-up desperation mode, and once again didn't get it done. And Green Bay sits at 2-5.
Wasn't a lot to say about this one afterwards. You obviously had the Insider Inbox column for Monday. I wrote our edition for Tuesday, and the most salient point I think I raised in this entire thing is there have been moments all year long for this team, and I'm not going to use the Y word. I'm not going to talk about the youth of it, but the one thing is, Mike, is when you have moments, it gives you hope, but moments also don't win you 60-minute football games. And for the Packers, I almost equated, I'm a big MMA guy, I almost equated to an MMA, UFC, boxing type match. I mean, you got your rounds, you got your quarters, and if you're constantly down 2 rounds on the scorecards, it's going to be very difficult to come back. And unless you're throwing a knockout blow late, you're going to have a very difficult time being able to pull it off. And this was another example of it, Mike. I mean, they've gone now however many first halves now without a touchdown, 4 or 5, whatever it's been. And defensively, they can stop defenses, or they can stop offenses. They can hold Minnesota to 62 rushing yards in this one after having some problems defending the run in a few other games. But then in this particular contest, they're completing the 3rd and longs. It doesn't balance out. And unfortunately for the Packers, it led to their 4th straight loss.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. It's a 60-minute game. It's a 17-game season. What I raised in Monday morning's inbox is that the hallmark of successful professional players and the hallmark of a successful professional team, as those individuals, come together collectively, is players being able to have a reasonably consistent level of play. You're a true pro in this game when you can do things consistently, when it's not just the flashes and the moments, but it's when you can do that time and time again. And 60 minutes is a long game, and 17 games is a long season. You're going to be tested, you're going to be tried, you're going to be forced to reach a certain level of consistency in order to succeed. And that's what the Packers continue to search for, because ironically, if you have a lot of inconsistencies across the board, your results then become very consistent, and that's why the Packers are on a 4-game losing streak. This one, everybody's talking about, when the Packers go into hurry up mode and all this, it's they start to move the ball and you start to get some points and all that, and it's yeah, but when the other team is up multiple touchdowns, like they play defense differently. I mean, you can't continue to put yourself in that position, even though the Packers had some chances to make it a one-score game in the fourth quarter. You got the blocked field goal that gave you good field position. You had a chance there, and then when you failed in the red zone, you get the sack fumble, and you get another chance in the red zone to make it a one-score game, and the offense fails again. But even with all of that, it still comes back to the fact that 2.5 quarters into the game, you're down 24-3, and you've done nothing on offense to establish anything about who you are. Your only success offensively is in desperation mode, and Matt LaFleur talked about that. It's like you can't live that way week after week, and the Packers are just still searching to find something that they can establish, that they can execute successfully, consistently, something to build on within any given game plan. And the way the first halves have gone, the game plan is kind of gets tossed out the window at halftime every week.
Yeah, I think he said they ran, 14 plays for the first 4 series or something like that. And you could talk about touches, you can talk about opportunities, but if you aren't able to move the ball on your first 4 series, it's just going to be difficult to be able to spread the ball around, to get Aaron Jones established, to be able to find what you're looking to achieve. The hardest thing to decipher about this game for me was the penalties, because it showed you again, as Matt LaFleur even talked about, if you're not consistent, if you're not playing well, you're not going to be able to overcome penalties. Everything about football is kind of like, 2 glasses and trying to keep the one that you want filled and the one that you don't want, empty. But the more water that you keep that's taken over the other side of the boat, the quicker you're going to sink. And for Green Bay, it was 11 penalties, 99 yards. How many of those came in third down situations? How many times the Packers were in 3rd and 10 plus? And conversely, for as well as Green Bay did defend Alexander Mattison and did defend well against Cam Akers, Kirk Cousins made some great plays as, and receivers went along right with him.
Yeah.
Jordan Addison is turning out to be a real stud in this league, and I had huge questions about Addison, if he was going to be big enough. He proved he can play big enough. I mean, you look at what, KJ Osborne being a complimentary piece. TJ Hawkinson didn't have huge numbers, but it was enough to move the chains, and
he was pretty darn effective.
I know the Vikings finished like 10 of 18 on third downs, but shoot, I wonder what that number was through the end of the third quarter.
Well, that's what I was just going to say when we talk about the third downs. I mean, what stood out to me, and I think I put this in Monday morning's inbox, although I'll be honest, I wrote, answered those questions on Sunday night in a bit of a fog after everything that had happened. But prior to the play on which Kirk Cousins' season unfortunately ended with the torn Achilles, prior to that play, Minnesota was 9 out of 14 on third downs. And not just 9 out of 14, Wes, but 6 of those 9 conversions, they needed either 8 or 9 yards to convert. And if third downs in general are supposed to be roughly, a 50% proposition, 45, 50%, whatever you want to put on it, 3rd and 8 plus is supposed to be, for an offense, more like a 30% proposition. Yeah. The defense needs to be stopping somewhere between 2/3 to 3/4 of those. And to allow 6 conversions of 3rd and 8 plus in one game, again, it's a sign of a team that is inconsistent and can't establish anything, because coming into the game, the Green Bay Packers defense was 9th in the league in third down percentage.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have this day where 3rd and 8 plus and Kirk Cousins is tearing you up, and all sorts of things happen that actually go against the profile that you had built through the first 6 games defensively. So it's it just feels like as soon as the Packers plug one leak in the boat, another leak springs up somewhere else, and they just continue to chase this, and they've got to find a way to get out of it.
That was the most disheartening piece of it, is because they were ranked 9th, and that was largely with having some issues defending the run. But yet the pass defense a lot of times, and the pass rush was picking them up in those third down situations. And in this this case, everything just flipped on its axis. And that's the sign of a 2-5 team that's kind of feeling some type of way right now. And it was difficult because at the same time, I remember talking with Preston Smith about this afterwards and a little bit with Kenny Clark. I mean, the Packers didn't give up on themselves. They didn't pull off a second quarter rally or second half rally, but they did continue to fight. I mean, they got the back-to-back sacks and the blocked field goal and then the strip sack late. There were moments, certainly that 14-play drive in the third quarter for the offense, but as I said, it's 60 minutes, and you can't play 15 of it. You have to go the full way.
Right, and that's the thing. And as much as the Packers' pass rush clearly had an impact in the fourth quarter, not only forcing the field goal that got blocked, and then with the backup quarterback in for the Vikings, you get the strip sack and all that. But through the first three quarters, was there much pressure on Kirk Cousins at all? Not really. I mean, the pass rush didn't really show up until the fourth quarter. And that's one of the reasons that, all the 3rd and 8 pluses were being converted. So as you said at the top, the Packers, they on both sides of the ball, they show the flashes. You see that it's there. But in this league, when you can't do it for more than a quarter and a half or 2 quarters, if you can't do it over the bulk of, nobody can play a perfect game for 60 minutes or a high-level game for all 60 minutes. That's too hard. But if you can't play the way you're capable of playing for enough of those 60 minutes, you're going to keep taking losses every week, and that's where the Packers have to find whatever it is that they can do, that they can rely on, that they can execute consistently on both sides of the ball, and then try to build on that. And it's just been a frustrating process to not be able to find it.
No, and that was where I kind of felt for Jordan too a little bit, because Matt LaFleur talked about in his post-game presser. Certainly you touched on it as well. Moments Jordan wants to have back, no question about it. He talked a lot about his mindset and his mentality out there and the things that he has to do better. But to have a pass where he actually reads the defense perfectly and he has the split safety look and he does fire one in there. It wasn't a perfect pass, but he does fire it in there for Jaden Reed. And then the safety collapses and kind of wrestles the ball away from him to be the only interception of the game. Those are the turning point moments in a football game.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
And again, especially when you've had so much difficulty taking the ball away defensively, you can have no lapses there. And I think that's going to be the big thing that Jason Vrabel and the Packers, passing game coaches are going to have to look at this week. Is you got a lot of young talent at receiver, but it's also having the strong hands, it's having the body and having the physicality to come down with those balls. Romeo Doubs did it a week earlier, and that was a play where potentially could have been a disastrous result if he's not fighting for the football against Patrick Surtain Jr. the way he did. You have to attack the football, but again, it goes back to the full thing. When you're not running the ball well and you're not passing the ball particularly well, some more issues on the offensive line this week. There's just a lot of things to fix, and the big challenge for Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff this particular week, getting ready for the Rams, is where is the emphasis and what do you look to improve upon? Because you can't fix everything in 6 or 7 days. You have to have a focus and kind of work your way forward from there.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier the penalties too, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but going back through the film, I'm not going to excuse 11 penalties. That's way too many, and it's been a problem in other games as well. But if you look at just this game in particular, you and I were talking about it in the press box, what ended up being that 15-yard penalty on Jonathan Owens along the sideline when the Packers win the challenge because the pass is incomplete, but the Vikings still get 15 yards and a first down. I don't know what Jonathan Owens is supposed to do on that. He's literally trying to back off. He's trying to lay off, and yet he still gets flagged for 15 yards. I took a closer look at Rashan Gary's roughing the passer. When I first saw it, I thought it was the body weight, landing on the quarterback thing. Then when I got a closer look at it, it's he hit him. I don't see how you could call that hit late. And Gary actually lands with his knees on the ground. Yeah. He didn't land with his whole body weight on the quarterback. He stopped and his knees hit the ground, and yet they still throw the flag for 15 yards. I'm not sure what Rashan Gary is supposed to do on that. You go back to the play very early in the game when Rasheed Walker was flagged for being ineligibly downfield when the Packers had this whole busted play. And obviously lots of guys on offense were not on the same page because it's either supposed to be a running play or the ball comes out right away. Rasheed Walker ends up getting flagged illegally downfield. Not his fault by any stretch. He's literally standing. He doesn't even have anybody to block or anything to do. He's standing 2 yards downfield when Love throws the pass up along the sideline, and he gets flagged for, ineligible man downfield. Has absolutely zero to do with what's going on. But that's a penalty that results from everybody else on offense not being on the same page and a complete breakdown. So, again, I'm not excusing 11 penalties, but when you look at what happened in this particular game, there are a lot of them that are absolute head scratchers that you just kind of go like, what is going on out there, and why do these continue to pile up against Green Bay?
Yeah, there was no nuance with Sean Hockley's crew with how they called this game. Now again, as Matt LaFleur will be the first one to tell you, you have to play better to not allow those moments to affect the outcome of a game.
Exactly.
The Packers
100%.
didn't do that.
That's 100% true.
But that being said, it came back to a lot of the things that I've had an issue with the National Football League in the last 10 years. The Jonathan Owens thing and the Rashan Gary thing are actually very similar if you actually go back and look at them. If you watch them in real time, don't slow it down, just watch it in real time. Both times, the defensive player is kind of being shielded from what he's seeing on the play by another defensive player. Jonathan Owens is the second safety involved on that play down the sideline.
Right.
Rudy Ford, I believe it was directly in front of him.
Yes.
He's just trying to stop the play, and as it turns out, dude, if he could have actually seen Jordan Addison putting his head down on that play, I believe it was Addison, he's going to be able to pull off. He doesn't see that, though. All he sees is the 20 jersey in front of him. Bang, bang, play, 15 yards. As I joked about on Twitter or X or whatever, the one thing that challenge, in addition to actually overturning the catch, which, again, it was just an amazing play by the referees to just get everything correct on that play, considering they incorrectly said that was a reception. But what was funny the most about it is New York and them, they both got a good look at that play again, and there's nothing you can do. You can't overturn a penalty. But it was just a ridiculous call.
It was absolutely ridiculous.
And then watch the Gary. You can watch the TV copy. You don't even need to watch like the football copy, the all 22 film. Watch the TV copy of the Gary hit. Watch it at full speed. And you tell me exactly what Rashan Gary's supposed to do when his job description is to attack the quarterback, to get after the quarterback.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, play. Kingsley Enagbari?
Yes, I was just going to say this discussion is essentially about not all penalties, even ones with the same name, are created equal, because what Kingsley Enagbari did was absolutely roughing the passer and absolutely a lack of discipline, and that is absolutely the type of penalty the Packers have to eliminate from their game. The other roughing the passer on Rashan Gary, I don't know what he's supposed to do.
I could have swore that was Clay Matthews.
Football. Yeah. Well, and it was, it was the Vikings, and it was Kirk Cousins at Lambeau Field.
At number 52.
It was, week 2 of 2018 all over again. All right, well, we'll move on to a couple of other topics. I'll take care of some sponsor business here first. SiriusXM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousins Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousins Subs, 50 years of better. Big news on Monday. Rashan Gary, we've already been talking about him. Rashan Gary is going to be a Green Bay Packer for quite some time. He signs a multi-year contract extension. He was playing this year on the rookie first-round pick, fifth-year option. And we sort of knew this was how it was going to go, that as soon as Rashan Gary showed that he was back from the ACL and back to his old self and the arrow of his career was still pointing up, the Packers are going to get this done and not let Rashan Gary reach free agency. It's the exact same approach they took with Elton Jenkins last year. This one just happened to the contract extension happened to come earlier in the season, whereas with Jenkins it was more around Christmas time. But congratulations to Gary. As Matt LaFleur said, you love to see guys who put in the work and go about it the right way and have the approach that Gary has, and a guy who is so well liked by his teammates, and for what he brings to the field, to the locker room, and everything else, to get rewarded for everything that he puts in. And hopefully, as I said, Rashan Gary's arrow is continuing to point up with regards to his career. The Packers defense is going to benefit from that for years to come.
Quintessential Packers move, taking care of one of their own and doing it with a little bit of time left on his contract to help you spread out that signing bonus. And let's be honest, Mike, this deal probably gets done last December if Rashan doesn't tear his ACL. That's the only question.
Absolutely. That and for all we know, there was something in the works.
Yeah.
Because these things don't happen overnight. There may have been something in the works last year before Gary's injury, and then when something like that happens, it all gets put on hold.
He was on such a tear at the beginning of last season, and then for him to come back, his second game really back, and well, technically I guess it'd be the third, but first at Lambeau, the 3-sack game against New Orleans, and just every single week he's taken steps, and 46. Season high 46 snaps this past weekend against Minnesota. Both Kenny Clark and Preston both gave him credit too. I mean, the stats maybe didn't show up as much, but he was effective and contributed on both of their individual sacks. Just the type of game wrecker Green Bay needs up front in the trenches, and a guy that they can move around and be versatile with. And the biggest piece of all, as you said, Michael, still only 25 years old. I mean, so much still ahead of him in terms of his game and his development and trying to become, as he even said in the locker room on Monday, the man he's becoming, the player he's becoming, the belief that Green Bay has shown in him, and ultimately, trying to prove to them that, hey, you guys made a huge investment in me in 2019. You're doing it again in 2023, and I want to be that all-pro, Pro Bowl type pass rusher that you can lean on for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a big part. He's a big part of what the Packers are doing defensively, and the fact that he wears number 52 is kind of fitting because this does feel a lot like when the Packers got Clay Matthews in the fold long term, and he was he's a centerpiece type of defensive player that you build your process, you build your scheme around, you build your game plans around what you think Rashan Gary can do out on the field on a weekly basis, and that's where the Packers defense is headed.
I'm going to say this too, just to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It was cool him talking. He talked for about 8 minutes at his locker on Monday. Already all business. He probably said the word Rams more than any other word during the presser.
Yeah.
Very much focused on that. But he did get, I'm not going to say he cried. He didn't cry. But you could tell the emotions kind of pouring through him a little bit, at least kind of going through him, talking about his mom and his sister being alongside him when he did sign that contract right before the game. Two ladies that have been with him since the beginning, as he said, since 7th grade when he started football to now, and been on that journey with him. And to be able, you can just see how proud he was of that, because it has been. It for a lot of people, NFL is a life-changing opportunity, but you can tell more than just money, the amount of pride that he felt being able to become the man and player that his mom thought he could be, and that he's tried to prove that he can be for her at this point in his life.
Yeah, and to do that also coming back from such a devastating injury a year ago, actually just, I guess, 51 weeks ago, like right around there, if my math is correct. A couple other things I want to hit on just with regard to other results around the league. We do like to talk about kind of what else is out there. And I'm not sure what you thought, Wes, but when I saw kind of what was happening in Week 8 with some of the results, what I kept coming back to mentally is we're seeing some good teams and teams that a lot of people believed would be good teams and playoff contenders and all that, showing their mettle a little bit in terms of bouncing back from some rough spots. The Detroit Lions, they got it handed to them by the Baltimore Ravens, but then they come back, their first home Monday Night Football game in however many years at Ford Field, and they get a victory. The Cincinnati Bengals were scuffling along. Joe Burrow wasn't entirely healthy with the calf injury, and the Bengals had these issues, and they get a big, 2-touchdown win over the San Francisco 49ers on the road. A couple weeks ago, the Dallas Cowboys got smacked around by the 49ers, and now they've come back and they put a pounding on the LA Rams, who will be coming into Lambeau Field this week. I think the score was like 33-3 or something like that before the Rams really found anything offensively. So that's kind of what I've been seeing, and I think the next team to show, now they have a bye this week with the 3 straight losses, but the next team to show, okay, are you going to bounce back from the adversity, is the 49ers, who have now gone from 5-0 to 5-3.
Yeah.
Their quarterback has was brought back on 6 days from concussion protocol. A lot of people questioning that. The Niners didn't play that well against the Bengals. I think that's the next one to watch, and the Kansas City Chiefs, they go into Denver. Streaks are always going to end. They had beaten the Denver Broncos 16 consecutive times, one of their division rivals. They go into Denver on a snowy Sunday, and somehow Patrick Mahomes and company, they only scored 9 points, and they had almost that many turnovers. I think they had 5 or 6 or whatever it was. Just goes to show that when you don't protect the football, you start turning it over. Anybody can beat you. So the Chiefs have some adversity to respond to now as well.
Tons of respect for Patrick Mahomes going out there and toughing it out. Probably shouldn't have just played in that game. Probably should have just called that one a night and given Blaine Gabbert an opportunity there. Just didn't seem like himself. In Denver, man, I told you 2 weeks ago, not that I'm some kind of soothsayer, but when we were talking about going into the Packer game, I thought Denver did a lot of good things, especially defensively against Kansas City, and it seemed like they made the corrections they needed to make. And 114 passing yards and 3 touchdowns for Russell Wilson. Not the biggest stat line you're ever going to see, but when you're efficient and when you commit yourself to the run the way that they did, they controlled the game, and then they ultimately protected the ball better and were able to succeed. Detroit was a real gut check, I felt like, because Vegas is just in shambles right now. I feel terrible for what's happening with Devontae there, but
yeah, I think we all do.
But they made adjustments, and Jahmyr Gibbs, he did have the best game of his career so far, and showed, hey, I can be an every down back if you need me to be.
Yeah, you feel like that guy is maybe just starting to get going, and they're going to get David Montgomery back, and then suddenly the Lions are going to have this 2-headed monster in the backfield, and to give their offensive coordinator Ben Johnson all sorts of options.
But for me, it's all about Aaron Glenn and that defense, because that is the one area we've seen Ben Johnson make some good play calls. We've seen their offense do some good things. Jamal Williams had 38 rushing touchdowns last year. But defensively, the last 11 months, man, I keep saying it, but they're a different team. And I think a lot of it is with that young pass rusher of theirs and doing the Thriller dance and everything with his background. But Vegas just could not do anything against them.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs has been neutralized. Devontae's been neutralized. Brutal.
Yeah. One other thought I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to get into a whole discussion because it's a discussion for another day.
It's about how the Giants almost won with 8 passing yards.
I was thinking about bringing that up, but I know we're kind of pushing our limits time-wise here. I was going to ask you, did you see the touchdown that the Eagles scored out of the tush-push formation?
I don't think I did, no.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. They just made that play that much harder to defend because they lined up in a short yardage with the 2 guys behind Jalen Hurts looking like they're going to do the whole tush-push thing. And one of the guys behind Hurts was DeAndre Swift. And Hurts took the snap, spun around, handed it off to him, and he just turned the corner and was gone. Touchdown. Now what do you do? Like, how in the world do you defend the Eagles on short yardage when they can do that and they're also successful with the tush push thing like 89.5% of the time or whatever? The Eagles are 7-1, and my personal opinion, I know they've got some issues to sort out defensively, but it feels to me like the Eagles maybe are just starting to hit their stride.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny to me that Jason Kelce, there were these questions about, hey, was he going to call it quits after the Super Bowl? That guy's playing as good of football as he's ever played right now, and he is the catalyst to that play. He
probably loves that play more than anybody else. Bet. It's probably fun for him.
It's like a little sumo wrestler.
Yep.
Just kind of pushing people around. But
yep.
The other thing I will mention is Nick Sirianni and the adjustments you have to make in this league. And unfortunately, I did not get a chance to see that play, but it reminds me of you can't fall into patterns. I think that's one of the things that I've said this on some of the other things I've done this week. Brian Flores impressed me about what the Vikings did on Sunday. They're blitzing more than any other team in the National Football League. So, all right, we're going to put 9 guys up on the line of scrimmage and we're going to drop 8. I mean, it's the adjustments you make off of what you're showing on film and when you decide to turn that switch. And certainly the Eagles have been on the cutting edge of it, and they've continued to sort of dominate this thing.
Yeah, well, there are some really good games on the schedule in the NFL in Week 9, and we'll talk about those on our next show as we preview Packers and Rams, which will be at Lambeau Field on Sunday at noon. But for now, we're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team all week long. We have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.